Hello there, welcome back. So let's talk about story number 2, the story of the painful past, the story of the emotional blockage, the story of the elephant in the room. So in story number 2, both people love each other, they like each other, and they want the relationship to work. There's positive motivation there. But on one or both sides of the relationship, there is some form of blockage where it makes it difficult for them to actually be fully functional and relaxed and able to be intimate in a normal functional relationship. So they like you, they love you, they want to be in a relationship with you, but they're freaking out, they're constantly in pain, they're overly sensitive, they have some kind of giant medical issue that's going untreated, they have some form of mental illness that's going untreated, and they are just not able to pull off being in a normal relationship. They're always freaking out, hurt, crazy, whatever it is. And these can come from all kinds of backgrounds. It can come from abuse history. It can come from crappy childhoods, injuries, assaults. All number of things can create this blockage. And it usually is some form of painful past. And what happens is, usually at the beginning of the relationship, fairly early on, the person that has the problem waves it in front of their potential partner as a red flag and says, basically says, by the way, I have this, terrible untreated illness. By the way, I have this assault history. By the way, I have this horrible abuse and neglect childhood, and it has these sort of negative effects. I freak out, I get anxious, whatever it is. And because that other person is into them and in love and wants the relationship to work, they see the red flag and they ignore it. And they advance the relationship further and deeper. And the reason the person who has that problem waves it as a red flag is they want to basically disclose it up front, so that when it gets bad later on, they can always say, but I told you, and you knew, and then we got married. It's kind of like if someone is, selling a house and they disclose that the roof is, pretty worn and in bad condition. Well, if the person still buys the house and then the roof collapses, they were told, not the seller's fault, it's the buyer's problem. Sucks to be you. So as you get into the relationship, into sort of the middle of the story, you start getting in a situation where, just like in story 1, energy starts to run low. Life goes on, kids, houses, cars, careers, and you start running out of energy to stop working around the problem. And this problem issue starts taking over and defining the entire relationship. In its worst cases, it starts defining the entire relationship. So the person that doesn't have the problem has to expend enormous energy, sort of walking on eggshells, tiptoeing around it, not setting their partner off, not upsetting them, doing extra things to keep them, under control. And the person that has the problem is overwhelmed by it, and they need their partner to cater to them and take care of them and work around the problem and be supportive of it. Otherwise, they'd have to fix it. And they tend to put a fair amount of energy into trying to frame the relationship itself and their partner as the real problem. So you get this thing where there's a fair amount of gaslighting and nonsense around this whole thing. It gets very, very murky, where the person who doesn't have the problem thinks that maybe the problem is them, and the other person just knows it's not them, but doesn't want to deal with the issue. If you can make the jump between seeing the relationship as the problem to actually seeing the real problem is the problem. It's the things that happened in the past that are leaching into the present and destroying the now. It's the untreated medical issue that is just, taking up everyone's time, attention, and you're having to work around it, and it's just creating massive amounts of difficulty. It's the untreated, mental illness that could be vastly improved by, seeing doctors, being on the right form of medication. It's going into therapy, dealing with the painful past. If you can make the jump from framing the relationship as the problem to actually saying, okay, this thing is this giant blockage that's wrecking our relationship. It's sucking up all our time and our energy, and we have to work on this. If that jump can be made, then there's usually a pretty good chance of success that the relationship will improve. It's just not going to be as quick as the solution to story number one. Story number one is relatively light, relatively superficial compared to this deep, serious, real problem. So if the problem is the problem and you work on the problem, there's real hope the relationship can be improved. It's just going to be slow, steady, incremental. You're not going to notice it getting better day to day, but over the months, over the years, you're going to see that it's slowly improving. So that is the short version of story number 2. Next video, come back, we'll talk about story number 3, which is more serious than story number 2. Talk to you then.